We'll trace the pseudocode. So I'll go ahead and close that and then use this one to code the Fibonacci number. Define sub, this time I'll just call it F for Fibonacci. It requires a single parameter, which is n, so I'm going to follow the same notation here. Before I do any recursion, I will first check whether this is a simple case. If n equals to 0, hey, that's easy because the Fibonacci number of 0 is just 0. If n equals to 1, it is also a simple case because the Fibonacci number of 1 is just 1. Only if it is not 0 or 1, I will have to go through the trouble of recursion, okay, calling the subroutine again. I would have to invoke f again. This time I use n minus 1 to specify n. That's one part of the addition. The other part is to invoke f again, but using n minus 2 to specify n. And if, and define sub. I'm going to fix all the indentation. That. Are we doing okay with this? I mean, are we somewhat convinced that this subroutine definition is equivalent to the definition of Fibonacci numbers? Sort of. Okay. Let's go ahead and see how it works. Okay, define main. We want to print. We don't really want to go too far out in this case. So let's go ahead and print invoke f and just use the Fibonacci number of 3. And this is going to be a longer trace already because we have 2 invocations on the same line of a recursive subroutine. As far as movies goes, you know, I think I can think of at least 2 movies that mention the Fibonacci numbers. Yep.
In this case, wouldn't it be better to use an array?
If I just what?
Wouldn't it be better to use an array?
So you can reuse the same result. Yes, that is correct. But the demonstration is here just so that we can understand the mechanism of returning a value. Okay. So the examples of returning values is incrementally getting more and more quote-unquote complex, but they're still using the same mechanism. Yep?
Is it n defined main on 13?
Oh, the indentation is wrong. N is actually, are you talking about the indentation?
N defined main, isn't that?
You ended define sub instead of
Oh,
main.
okay, yeah. Define subroutine main. There we go. Thank you. Okay, are we doing okay so far? Okay, so let's go ahead and trace this code. It looks kind of nasty, but it really is not any different from the previous, 3 examples that we have seen so far. In a way, this class is good in a way because I don't have to break up the discussion of return values over like two days. We can basically just have one continuous stretch of discussion on one single topic, which is good in a way, but only if people can maintain their attention throughout all this time. Okay, let's go ahead and trace this. Okay, we have comments on one column. We have line number on the second one. So the setup is pretty much the same thing as before. Return line number is post. So that part gets really boring after a while. We get into line 12, of the main subroutine. We have to invoke f. So in this case, we have return info because we are going back to line 12, which has something to print after the invocation of Fibonacci. At the same time, we have to specify parameter n because we are invoking f. And in this case, n starts with a value of 3, just like with our factorial example. So far, nothing is really new or different from the previous sample program. After this, we go into the subroutine. The first action line of the subroutine is on line 3. Line 3 doesn't do anything too exciting. N equals to 0 is false, because n equals to 3 at this point. Then we go to line 5 to evaluate the alternative. N equals 1 is also false because n equals to 3 at this point. So we have no choice but to go to line 8 at this point. Okay, so this is a good time to split the screen so we can concentrate a little bit more on just one part of the program. In fact, I would use this way because I need more width with the trace window. Okay. We are now on line 8. We have to execute, return the result of one invocation plus the result of the other invocation. I definitely cannot return yet because I have 2 invocations to have to take place before I can add and then return. So that means at this point I have to invoke Fibonacci again. I have to set up return info as well as n. Because we read from left to right, I will handle the one to the left-hand side first. This one specifies that the new parameter n, column G, is n minus 1. But the n of n minus 1 on the left-hand side refers to column E, which has a value of 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. So that takes care of the new parameter n. Return info copies pretty much the entire line, except for the invocation that we are executing at this point. So we have to say line 8 is a return statement. The first invocation will be replaced by a single value later on, but the second invocation is not done yet. So I'm just copying the second invocation the way it is specified in the pseudocode. Are we doing okay so far with how I set up return info? Okay. Have I changed the rules a little bit here since the beginning of the discussion of return values? Nope. I have not changed the mechanism a single bit since the beginning of this discussion. Now that I have set up column F and column G, I can go back to the beginning of the subroutine starting on line 3, which is getting kind of boring. N equals 0 is false. Then I go to line 5, n equals 1 is false. Then we go to line 8, which is another case of recursion. In fact, I can just copy and paste these 2 cells and only have to replace n with a value of 1 this time. Are we convinced that this is the right way of setting up column H and column I?
Shouldn't n be 0?
Okay, well, let's take a look. According to this question mark, we are taking care of the left invoke. The left invoke wants to specify n minus 1 to go to n. The n minus 1 on the left-hand side refers to column G. Column G has a value of 2. 2 minus 1 is 1.
Right. I thought you were going to do the invoke on the right side.
Nope, we're still doing it on the left side, but this is actually the left side of the second invocation of Fibonacci.
So we wouldn't touch the right side of the addition?
Not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
We didn't solve the question.
Exactly. We can only resolve one unknown at a time, and because we read from left to right, we choose to deal with the invoke on the left-hand side first. Are we doing okay so far? Okay. Then we go back into the subroutine starting on the first action line. Once again, it is line 3. On line 3, n equals to 0 is false. On line 5, n equals 1 is finally true, because in this case, I have column I being n, and it has a value of 1. So that means I'm ready to execute line 6. Line 6 is a return statement. And with any type of return statement, we only have to copy and paste the return info cell, change the question mark to whatever value I'm returning. In this case, it's just a constant of 1, and I'm done with the return statement. Okay? After line 6, there's nothing else to do in the conditional statement. We go to line 10. Line 10 is the end of this invocation, of this subroutine. We deallocate all the columns at this point, and then we continue execution where? On line 8. Very good. We continue execution on line 8 because return info tells me so. Except on line 8, it is no longer like this with 2 invokes. It is now like this in column H17 with only 1 additional invocation. So now we take care of the right-hand side. Okay? Now when we take care of the right-hand side, this part can get a little bit confusing because we are executing this statement, but in the context of column F and column G. Are we doing okay so far? We are executing line 8 as return 1 plus invoke F, n minus 2 goes to n, but in the context of F and G, column F and column G. So that means I have to reallocate column H for return info purposes. I have to reallocate column I as parameter n. This time, we use n minus 2 to specify this new n. But the n minus 2 on the left-hand side of the right arrow refers to column G. Because at this point, column I is already gone, I have to use column G as n. Column G has a value of 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. And that's why my new n, my new parameter n, has a value of 0. Is that okay so far? Is that okay? What do I put into return info? I'm taking care of the invoke on the right-hand side. So that means I copy everything the same as before, except the invoke that I'm taking care of this time is replaced by a single question mark. Are we doing okay so far with the columns with return info? Yes? Okay. It might take a few more tries, when you go home, don't just read the solution. Try to trace it without, reading the answer and see if your answer, your trace, look exactly the same as mine. If it does not, you have to find out when it starts to, become different and try to explain, why it is becoming different. Because, usually that's unless it is a careless mistake, it usually reflects a misunderstanding of the concept. Okay, so now we are ready to go back into the subroutine starting on line 3. So back to line 3, we ask whether n equals to 0, and this time it is true because n as a parameter has a value of 0. So that means we have to go to line 4. Line 4 is returning a value of 0. Okay, when we return a value of 0, we just go take a look at the return info cell, copy and paste it, change the question mark to whatever value I'm returning. In this case, it is 0, and I'm done. After line 4, there's nothing else to do in the conditional statement, and we jump all the way to line 10. Line 10 is the end of a subroutine. We deallocate all the columns that we allocated earlier. Okay? And then where do we go? We go back to line 8. Very good. And line 8 now looks like this. Cell H22 is